Thank you, Nathan, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Yukon, as we say, Yukon larger than life. Today, I'd just like to run through a few things. We've got just under a half hour. We've got a presentation that takes nearly that long. The Yukon, we will start off by highlighting that we like to identify the Yukon has 4 reasons to travel because we have 4 distinct seasons. We'd also like to go through where is the Yukon, about getting there, why you should travel to the Yukon, or your clients should travel to the Yukon for their vacation. We talk about the aurora and the winter activities, then the extreme opposites being the midnight sun and the summer, and the various regions and tour routes and what have you that we can utilize. So, first of all, where is the Yukon? Yukon is a part of Canada, as you all know, and Canada being such a huge, vast, massive land. The Yukon is located just inside Alaska on the top left-hand side where you see Fairbanks, Alaska. And then underneath the Northwest Territories, you see Yellowknife, and above BC where you see Edmonton, et cetera, along there. So that's where the Yukon is located. About getting to the Yukon, a great variety of ways. You can work on around 2.5 hours, primarily from Vancouver is the most valid point of entry, of exit, I should say, into Whitehorse, utilised by Air Canada 1 or 2 times daily, depending on the season. And then Air North, which is Yukon's own airline, it's twice daily. Air North commencing very shortly from Vancouver Island, Victoria, to Whitehorse. I believe it's twice a week, so that's another access point, as well as some seasonal WestJet services, and then other gateway cities, mainly Air North, Air Canada, etc., Vancouver, as we already highlighted, Calgary, Edmonton, Kelowna, and also Ottawa via Yellowknife is another longer journey, but also gives you that access by road. Very popular in and out through Alaska and also, of course, BC. And at Skagway, the cruise line, it's only which services that into that area, which is very, very popular, particularly for Australian travellers. That's only 2 hours from Whitehorse, and a lot of people take the White Pass rail for that, which I'll speak about a little later. So that's the access into the Yukon, and with regard to the Yukon, what is the Yukon all about? Well, it's about the variety of things that we have highlighted on that screenshot there. The aurora being the northern lights, the winter activities, a great variety of, and then the extreme opposite being the midnight sun, daylight all of the time in the northern summer. All types of adventure, whether it be the perception, whether it be soft adventure or a little bit more aggressive, that depends on the person. Enormous scenery and great wildlife. Yukon has Canada's highest mountains, a great variety and range of national parks and historic sites. It's the home of the world-famous Klondike Gold Rush, and, of course, the history of the First Nations people, which is very, very rich in culture and activities that they have been doing. A great destination for driving, as well as just general tour packages. So, again, just a little bit on the geography of the Yukon. Yukon, as you see there, I mentioned entry point by air is Whitehorse, down the bottom of the little triangle there. And then you'll see Skagway, which is below that, so it's not very far from Skagway, then up through Dawson City, and then on further through the Tombstone Territory Park, and all the way up into the Northwest Territories as well. So that just gives you a little bit more of the geography of the destination, the capital being Whitehorse. Whitehorse, while we call it a city, really on Australian standards, you take it as a reasonably large town of 28,000 people. However, very rich in culture, and also a great base for doing day tours of sightseeing and other general outdoor activities. Again, a base for access to the mountain and hiking trails, daily air access as we highlighted earlier on, and it's a perfect base to explore all of the Yukon, and the highways lead to and from Whitehorse. Whitehorse is, mentioned a moment ago, a cultural centre. Being a wilderness city, people need to make their own lifestyle, which they do very, very well. So it's very strong in music and general arts, including galleries, but a lot of folk-type activity and wonderful shopping. But even more popular, I guess, is the range of food and beverage. It's restaurants from all parts of the world are featured in Whitehorse, and locally grown produce and so on. It's quite an amazing place. So it has a small charm town, as I mentioned. However, it's a 28,000 population, being Whitehorse. It is the base also for the most prominent aurora viewing in that part of the Northern Hemisphere, from late August to mid-April. We always recommend that your clients stay 3 to 4 nights. 85% of the time, if they stay that long, or sorry, it should be 95% of the time, if they stay that long, they will see Northern Lights. I mean 95% of over the 3 nights. So it's possible to see it every night, or maybe it's one night, depending on how the aurora is behaving at the time. The tours out to the centre are based from Whitehorse, so people can, whether they're staying independently or as a group, they can have access. The tours leave Whitehorse around 10 p.m. in the evening and return back around 2 a.m. It's 20 minutes from town, as I mentioned. They have heated yurts being like a teepee or a tent, give access to all snacks, coffee, hot chocolates, etc., etc., and they give great assistance in photography, because that's what people go there for, is to take their film, etc., and of the aurora lights. It's probably wise to have a very good camera and not so much rely on a phone. Aurora viewing is also visible from many of the lodges, which are maybe scattered half an hour approximately out of Whitehorse. The reason why it's moved out of town is that it's kept away from the light and of the town lights and the city lights, so it gives more and better visibility. Accommodations, it's a 5-star experience, however, 3-star accommodations. Accommodations are very comfortable, they're very nice and very good, but purely just great for access to experiencing the Yukon. So from hotels to lodges and cabins, there's some nice B&Bs, a range of hostels and camping, so it caters for all types of people. A lodge stay, as you can see there, is a typical type lodge. Log cabins, most of them have all the facilities. Most have indoor toilets these days. Some don't, but most have. They'll arrange for your airport transfers. However, you're probably booking your packages through the various wholesalers who will have all of that packaged for you, including the daytime touring, etc. From Whitehorse, there are a variety of city tour packages, including the local historic Klondike ship. It's now a National Historic Site. Some amazing, wonderful museums, including the McBride Museum, and daytime activities for those people who are doing aurora viewing and staying up more late at night, so they can do the Springs Wildlife Preserve, visit the brewery, go shopping, and do a variety of other things. Talking about things to do, the Dakini Hot Springs, a great relaxing area, particularly in the wintertime. That is also just about to go through a multi-million-dollar refurbishment, which will bring it in and look like a typical Japanese-style facility, which is going to be quite amazing when it's completed. Also close to the springs is the Yukon Wildlife Preserve, like a huge outdoor zoo. All types of animals and wildlife can be experienced and seen there. So it's a great way of just experiencing the wildlife if you don't happen to see it while travelling around. Famous for dog sledding, obviously, in the wintertime. You can go out with your huskies and do some amazing dog sledding, which is quite fascinating, as well as snowmobiling, snowshoeing, etc., etc. So a lot of activity for those people to experience during the daytime if they're out doing the aurora viewing at night, so they can have a late start to the day and still experience many of those things. The winter temperatures, as you can see there, gets down to minus 35 degrees Celsius, so it is quite cold. We also arrange, or your packages will all have winter clothing rentals which people can utilise. So it's a dry climate, not humid, so you don't feel that really deep down cold as long as you've got the right layers of clothing on. Snow from November through April. Clearest and coldest January, February, normally best for aurora viewing, and the sunlight, as you can see, not a lot, 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. However, the extreme opposite during the midnight sun period, which is 6 a.m. till 9 p.m. So it stays bright most of the way through. And as you can see there, up nearly 24 hours of daylight in the main peak solstice period in June. Summer temperatures get up to 35 degrees Celsius, so it can go from minus 35 up to plus 35 in the extremes. So it's just a wonderful, wonderful destination for an enormous amount of variety. Some of these summer activities that you can experience, all the outdoor activities that's highlighted on the screen there now, they're varied and many, from historic and cultural all the way through to the outdoor activities and taking in the magnificent scenery. So beautiful waterways, so many rivers and lakes that Canada is famous for, and certainly Yukon has its share. Another thing that has become very, very popular is canoeing, and that now is really with all age groups, not just young, but goes right through into the well-mature age group for both guided and unguided half-day, multi-day tours. A great range of flight-seeing activities, whether by fixed-winged plane or by helicopter tours. It can be done for fishing as well as sightseeing. A great variety of activity, all accessed from Whitehorse area. Of course, Yukon's wildlife is what it's famous for. 35,000 people and many, many thousand of species of caribou, moose, mountain sheep, as you see, black bears, grizzly bears, and enormous variety of birds. So people can usually see these, as I mentioned, at the Wildlife Preserve, or however, quite often visible on the roadway as you're travelling along. Enormous amount of activity. So what can we do beyond Whitehorse? Whitehorse is a perfect base. Great for day trips, the South Klondike Highway, very, very beautiful and scenic and quite a magnificent experience. Car crosses around 40 minutes south of Whitehorse into the Southern Lakes area. This is the commencement of the White Pass and Yukon train, which was the basis of the way north for the gold rush. So that's a First Nation settlement, been redeveloped and very active today with wood carving demonstrations and highlighting how people used to live, and it's quite a fascinating area. I mentioned the White Pass. Yukon rail built in the 1900s for that followed up from the trekking of the people going up to do their prospecting for their gold rush. So it's an amazing mountainous and spectacular area, and you can just imagine, well, probably not imagine, how tough it was for people on their horses and also their husky teams and what have you, dragging all the facilities up to Dawson City for the gold rush. And also it is said that there was very, very little hassle or problems. People worked very, very well together, so it was quite a unique This is a great day trip from Whitehorse and also from Skagway from the cruise ships. Guided and mountain biking and cultural tours, half-day, multi-day. It can be guided or self-guided for all types of levels of experience. Kluane National Park, it's a UNESCO site. It's a couple of hours drive out from Whitehorse. Magnificent, spectacular ice fields. Great place for just relaxing, hiking, biking, walking, sightseeing by air. Part of the world's largest ice field is St. Elias Mountains, has Canada's highest peaks, as it highlights there. Mount Logan, the tallest mountain in Canada, is just under 6,000 meters, I should say. And in fact, there's 20 summits over 4,000 meters. So it's quite a large, and it's the largest and the youngest mountain range. Sightseeing tours, either from maybe an hour up to 2 hours over all these magnificent iced up areas, and you can see buffalo, you see mountain goats, a great variety of wildlife there. Then the extreme opposite, beautiful, beautiful scenic drives, particularly in summer and in the fall. The picture tells the story. Absolutely quite a beautiful and a diverse destination, of great amount of waterways and lakes and things to experience and do. A wonderful destination for driving. We suggest there's a 4-night type suggested itinerary. Most of the tour wholesalers will have something like this, so they cover the full circle that includes in and out of Alaska as well, and over at Haines, and being able to experience down at Skagway as well. So it's a great destination for driving. So there's 600 kilometres spread over, say 4 nights accommodation. Then onwards from Whitehorse and Kluane National Park area is access up to Dawson City. That can go 2 ways. One is in through and out of Alaska at the border crossing, or it can be taken straight up the centre, which is a magnificent scenic drive as well, or access by air for 1 hour. And from Dawson City, access into Tombstone Territorial Park and up through into the Northwest Territories if need be. The most famous part of that part of the world in Yukon is Dawson City is the world famous and probably the greatest gold rush of history. In 1896 was the start of the gold rush of the Klondike gold rush. Over 100,000 people headed to the Yukon and up into Dawson City. Dawson City is an amazing, amazing place. You feel as though it's 100 years old and it's still operating the same. Beautiful, beautiful Art Deco style. There's wooden boardwalks. The permafrost keeps the roadways frozen, so they don't seal them there. And it's just like a Wild West town. It's a great, great feel, great atmosphere. As I mentioned, 6 hours drive up from Whitehorse, or an hour's flight. From 100,000 people now down to 2,000 people. This Dawson City facility is open most of the year. It does close over the heavy winter period because it does get very cold there. And but some of the hotels remain open all of the year. Also, another great area to experience the aurora viewing. Historic gold mining. People can still pan for gold if they wish. They can visit the dredges. Amazing what these dredges used to do way back in the day of the gold rush. Great culture, guided tours around, poetry reading, and just a lot of the historical and cultural aspects highlighted throughout the time. Diamond Tooth Gerties is Canada's oldest still operating casino. From music shows, can dances, and still gambling can be taken as well. It's dancing right through the summer period, May through September. wonderful, wonderful First Nations centre, as there is right throughout the Yukon. The First Nations people do an amazing job in highlighting what they had to offer. Great viewing from above Dawson City, what they call the Midnight Dome. Great for during the midnight sun period, but also good for viewing of the aurora out of the summer period. And access into Tombstone Territorial Park, an absolutely amazing and beautiful region of the territory of Yukon. It's 1.5 hours drive from Dawson City into the park via the Dempster Highway. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful colours in the fall in particular. Great for hiking and also heli hiking, but just experiencing, and also a lot of wildlife can be experienced and seen from there. An example of that part of the world, it's possible to do Dawson City up into Inuvik, into the Northwest Territories, 700 odd miles on a road trip, 7 or 8 days, but it's also can be taken on a scenic flight as well, and experience just this magnificent, beautiful area. And it's not crowded, as you can see. In fact, that is indicative of the Yukon right throughout. No crowded roads, just really, really wonderful scenic vistas and just relaxing driving. Iconic drives I mentioned a while ago. We come back to this. It is something that you can either have a package tour or people can drive themselves, and it's very, very easy to do that, combining a car rental with hotels, cabins, Airbnb, or a little bit of camping if they wish, and they can utilise an RV as well. Wonderful scenery and wildlife viewing, as it's highlighted there. So as we go through, again, just to recap on the aspects of Yukon, I mentioned 4 reasons, because there are 4 distinct seasons. Aurora viewing is very, very popular, particularly for Australians, through late August through to April. And then we've got the other part, which we've got the more heavy winter period, where there's actually really usually heavy snow and can get very, very cold, December through April. What I mentioned earlier on, it's not a biting cold. It's more being prepared by having the right number of layers of clothing, not the heavy amounts of clothing, but it's a very, very pleasant atmosphere as well. It might be heavy snow and really cold, -20 degrees, but it doesn't really feel that heavy. In the midnight sun, extreme opposite, of course, where you've got daylight virtually 24 hours a day through June through September. A great variety, as we highlighted through some of those images on the screen before, from mountains to ice fields, rivers and lakes, sort of says it all. It's great. We call it larger-than-life scenery, and it's uncrowded, so you don't see very, very many people wandering around, and very, very pleasant to drive in. Enormous wildlife can be seen from the roadway. You see bears maybe having a bite of grass on the hillside. It's just quite a fascinating area. The history of the gold rush is famous, and of course the First Nations culture, as we highlighted earlier on. So it really has something to offer everyone in the Yukon. It's becoming more and more popular with Australians, and Australian visitors now are the third most, or the third in the world, following USA and Germany. So we're a long way from the Yukon, but people are really utilising it very well. It's a great destination. So just highlighting a few more things again in regard to Whitehorse area, Wilderness City, less than 2.5 hours from Vancouver or Calgary. It has a great number of areas that are highlighted earlier on, from the Southern Lakes, the Kluane National Park, Dawson City and Tombstone Territorial Park, and then further on into the Dempster Highway up into the Arctic if people have a little bit more time. Great variety of accommodations, 3-star but 5-star experiences, and hotels, B&Bs, lodges with their own unique atmosphere, and a range of camping aspects as well. All types of package tours the wholesalers will have here, and as we say, it's a unique experience. So remember, we have 4 seasons, so there's 4 great reasons to travel to the Yukon. So I think we're just about covered most things. I'm sure, Nathan, people may have some questions.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. Thanks for a great presentation. That was really good, telling us all about the Yukon. So yeah, as Ray mentioned, now is the time for questions. So please either shoot them through on the chat function or you can unmute yourself. We do have one question in already from Joe. Did you mention that the Takini Springs are being refurbished?
Yes, they will be done. I'm not sure exactly the timing. It still has full access, but they're creating a really Japanese influence type thing, which if those people who have been to Japan will really really enjoy it, because it's just a naturally beautiful location, and it will really enhance the experience there, particularly in the winter time.
Great, thank you for that. Jason, great, thanks for that as well. Any other questions, guys? And otherwise we'll stop it there. So Claire has said, what was the tagline you said that she loves? 3-star accommodation, 5-star experience? Is that
That's it. Yes, yep, that's it.
Perfect. I think that's a really important point, having been up there, and a lot of parts of Canada, you know, in those remote areas, it's the experience itself is 5-star, whereas maybe the standard of accommodation is more that mid-range. So it's an important point.
Yeah, and also the food is absolutely amazing. The food that they turn out in some of these small lodges. The catering is wonderful and locally grown, majority of it, so it's a great experience.
Yeah.
So that in itself can be a 5-star experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we might end it there, guys.